Yeah, for letting my sister face the consequences after she stole my prom dress? I am 17 years old. I am in my senior year of high school, and honestly I need to tell this story because for a long time I thought it was normal or that maybe I was the problem, you know? But now that I am living with my grandma and I can see things from the outside, I realize how messed up everything was. And I guess I should start by telling you that I have an older sister, Lena, who is 19. Basically, she has been the perfect princess of the family for as long as I can remember. While I have been, I do not know how to say it, like everyone's emotional punching bag. The one who is always wrong, the one who always causes problems, even if I literally do nothing. I do not remember exactly when all this started, to be honest, but I do remember that when I was like 8 or 9 years old, it was already obvious that Lena could do whatever she wanted and nothing ever happened while I could breathe incorrectly and my parents would yell at me. And look, I am not exaggerating, seriously. There were times when Lena would get physical with me, leaving marks on my arms or acting aggressively until I cried. And when I ran to my parents, they told me to stop being so dramatic, that it was just sister stuff, or that I had probably done something to provoke her. But if I talked back to Lena or if I accidentally broke something of hers, then it was the end of the world. They punished me for weeks, took away my phone, and did not let me go out with my friends. Basically, they treated me as if I were a delinquent. My parents are both 40 years old, and I have always thought they are adult enough to know better. Do you know what I mean? Like, they are not some 20-year-old kids who do not know how to be parents, but they still acted as if Lena were an angel fallen from heaven and I were some kind of burden they had to endure. Lena always had the best of everything. Brand name clothes, the newest iPhone every year, her own car when she turned 16, a Honda Accord brand new, literally from the dealership, piano lessons, French lessons, whatever she wanted. I had to work since I was 15 in a coffee shop to be able to buy my own things because my parents always said there was no money for me, that they already gave me a roof and food and that I should be grateful. And the craziest thing is that they earned good money. My dad works in finance and my mom is a manager at a marketing company. I mean, it is not like we were poor or anything like that. The thing is that I learned to make myself small, not to ask for anything and to settle for whatever. I wore the clothes Lena did not want anymore, which were almost always stained or torn. I ate the leftovers from dinner while Lena ordered delivery if she did not like what was available. I did all the household chores while she stayed in her room playing video games or going out with her friends. My parents not only allowed all this but actively reinforced it. Like, if I complained, they said I was ungrateful, that Lena deserved certain things because she was special, or because she had anxiety that conveniently only appeared when she had to do something she did not want to do, or because she was more sensitive than me. But well, the final straw. The moment that literally changed my whole life was about 8 months ago, just before my senior prom. I had been saving for months, working extra shifts at the coffee shop on weekends, and skipping meals to be able to save more money because I wanted to buy myself a pretty dress for prom. Not something super expensive, but something that was mine, something that I had chosen, something that made me feel pretty for one night, you know? Then I found this perfect dress in a store. It was navy blue with a little subtle sparkle. It fit me incredibly well and cost like $200, which for me was a lot, but I paid for it with my own money and I was so excited. The day of prom arrived, and I was in my room getting ready. I already had the dress on. I had done my makeup myself watching YouTube tutorials because obviously, my parents were not going to pay for someone to do my makeup, and I was waiting for my friend to arrive so we could go together. Then Lena came into my room, saw my dress, and literally her eyes lit up in a way that scared me. She said, "That dress is perfect. I am going to wear it for the party tonight." And I was like, "What, Lena? It is my prom dress, all my saved money. Besides, it does not even fit you. You are taller than me." She just laughed and left the room screaming, "Mom, Dad, I want her dress for my party." And then, and this is what I still struggle to believe even though I lived it, my parents came into my room and my mom told me, "Take off the dress. Lena needs it." I was in shock, literally. I could not process what was happening and I told them, "No, this is my dress. I bought it with my money. I have to leave for prom in an hour. You guys cannot be serious." My dad turned red with rage and yelled at me to stop being so selfish, that Lena had an important party that night and that I could go to prom in anything, that nobody cared how I looked anyway. Lena was standing there with a smile on her face. That smile she always put on when she knew she was going to get her way. I tried to refuse. Seriously, I tried, but my dad threatened to physically remove the dress from me if I did not take it off myself. And I was crying so much I could not even see well, and in the end I had to take it off and give it to Lena while she laughed and said things like, "Oh, thanks, little sister, I knew you would understand." My parents did not even stay to see how I was. They just left with Lena to take her to her party. I stayed there sitting in my room in my underwear crying. My friend arrived for me, and when I told her what happened, she was furious. She offered me a dress of hers, but I no longer felt like going. I felt humiliated, destroyed, as if I was worth nothing. I stayed home that night crying in my room while I listened to my parents return and tell Lena how beautiful she looked in my dress. 2 days later, my paternal grandma called me. She lives like 2 hours away and I adore her, but I only see her every 2 or 3 months because my parents always make excuses not to visit her. My grandma is 66 years old and is basically the only person in my family who has always been kind to me, who remembers my birthday, and who asks me how I really am, not just as a formality. Then she called me and said, "Honey, I am waiting for the photos from your prom. I know it was 2 days ago, and I am anxious to see how you looked. And I do not know what happened to me, but something inside me broke and I told her the truth. I told her everything about the dress, how my parents forced me to give it to Lena, and how I missed prom." There was a long silence on the other end of the phone, and then I heard my grandma breathe deeply and say, "I am going to pick you up tomorrow. We are going to have dinner together. Do not tell your parents anything." The next day my grandma arrived, and I told my parents I was going out with a friend. They did not even ask me anything. They were too busy watching a movie with Lena. My grandma took me to a very nice Italian restaurant, one of those where the candles are on the tables and everything feels elegant. And while we ate, she asked me if there were other things I wanted to tell her. And I do not know, something in the way she asked me without judging me, just with genuine interest, made everything come out. I told her about the years of favoritism, about how Lena became physical with me and nobody did anything, about how I had to work to buy my own things while Lena received everything without doing anything, about how I felt invisible in my own house, about how sometimes I wished I could simply disappear because maybe then my family would be happier. My grandma cried while I spoke, and when I finished she took my hands and told me, "This ends today. I promise you I am going to fix this." After dinner she gave me a bag, and when I opened it, there was a new MacBook inside, like one of those that cost over $2,000 easily. She told me it was a belated birthday and prom gift, and basically for all the events my parents had ignored. I could not believe it. I had never had something so expensive and so new that was mine. And I hugged my grandma and cried again, but this time with gratitude. She made me promise that I would call her if anything happened, and that I should seriously think about going to live with her after graduating. When I got home that night with the laptop in my backpack, Lena saw me enter and obviously asked me where I was coming from. I told her I had gone out with a friend and tried to go up quickly to my room, but she followed me. She asked me what I had in the backpack with that voice she uses when she wants something, and I made the mistake of telling her that my grandma had given me a laptop. Her eyes went crazy and she snatched the backpack from me. She took out the MacBook and said, "Perfect, mine is already old. I am going to keep this one." And something inside me simply snapped in that moment. You know, like when you have endured so much that suddenly you cannot take it anymore. I grabbed the laptop back out of her hands and told her, "No, this is mine. My grandma gave it to me. And if you touch it, I am going to tell everything, absolutely everything you have done to me for years." Lena stayed quiet for a moment. I think it was the first time I said no to her with such firmness. And then she ran screaming to my parents, saying that I had pushed her, that I had threatened her, and that I had shouted horrible things at her. My parents came to my room furious, but I was already locked inside. And I shouted at them through the door that if they came in, I was going to call the police and my grandma. I heard my dad pounding on the door saying he was going to punish me for months, but eventually they left, and I stayed there all night without sleeping, hugging my laptop as if it were the only thing keeping me sane. The next morning, super early, I sent a message to my grandma telling her everything that had happened. She replied immediately telling me to pack a bag with my important things and that she was going to come pick me up. I was terrified but also relieved, like finally someone was doing something. I packed my clothes, some books, photos I had saved, my important documents that I had found hidden in my dad's study, my birth certificate, my social security card, that kind of stuff, because I was afraid my parents would not give them to me later, and obviously my laptop. I sent a message to my grandma when I was ready, and she told me to wait, that she was going to arrive with someone else to have a witness to what happened. My grandma arrived about an hour later with a friend of hers named Elliot. I think he is a lawyer or something like that. I never asked him exactly. He knocked on the door, and when my mom opened, my grandma told her very calmly but firmly that she was coming to pick up her granddaughter and her belongings. My mom got hysterical, saying that I was not going anywhere, that she was my mother and had every right to keep me at home. My grandma told her she had evidence of years of neglect and unsafe conditions, and that if they did not let me go voluntarily, she was going to call the police and child protective services right there. Elliot was recording everything on his phone. Then I came down with my bag, and Lena saw me and simply lost her mind. She threw herself on me, starting to scream that I was a traitor and a liar, asking how I dared to invent things about her. She tried to grab my bag, but my grandma stepped in between, and then Lena, and this is the craziest part, struck me directly in the face with a closed fist. I felt my nose break. I literally heard a crunch, and I was injured immediately. I fell to the floor from the pain, and Lena threw herself on top of me, continuing to strike me in the stomach and the face while screaming that she hated me, that I ruined everything, and that she wished I had never been born. Elliot had to physically pull her to get her off me, and my grandma was screaming for someone to call 911. Everything after that is kind of a blur because my face hurt a lot. The ambulance arrived, and the paramedic said that my nose was definitely broken, and that I probably had a cracked rib. They also took me to the hospital, and my grandma went with me while Elliot stayed at the house waiting for the police to arrive. At the hospital, they took photos of all the injuries, took x-rays, and documented everything. The doctor asked me if it was the first time my sister had been physically aggressive with me, and when I told him no, that it had been like this for years but that this was the worst time, he looked at me with such sadness and told me he was going to make a mandatory report to the authorities. I spent about 4 hours in the hospital. They put a splint on my nose and bandaged my ribs and gave me medication for the pain. My grandma was there the whole time. She never let go of my hand, except when they had to attend to me. She told me that Elliot had spoken to the police at my house, and that they had arrested Lena. She said there had been a huge scene with my parents screaming and trying to stop them from taking her, but that they could do nothing because Elliot had the video of Lena attacking me. My grandma also told me that she was going to take me to her house, and that she was going to do everything legally necessary to ensure that I was safe. That night I slept at my grandma's house for the first time. She has a beautiful house, not huge but very cozy, with a guest room that she told me could be mine for as long as I needed. I struggled to sleep because of the pain and because every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lena's face full of hate while she hit me. My grandma brought me tea and sat on the edge of my bed like grandmas do in movies, stroking my hair and telling me that everything was going to be okay, that she would protect me, and that I should never have gone through all that. The next day, Elliot came to the house and explained that we were going to file formal charges against Lena for assault, and also against my parents for child neglect. He asked me if I was willing to testify and tell my story to the authorities, and I told him yes, that I was ready for the truth to come to light. We went to the police station and I gave my statement. I told them about years of mistreatment. I showed them old photos where marks that Lena had left me before could be seen. I gave them the names of friends of mine who knew what was happening. Basically, I gave them all the information I could. The officers were very kind to me, especially a woman who was a detective for juvenile cases, and she told me she was going to do everything possible to help me. Lena got out on bail about 2 days later. My parents obviously paid to get her out, and the first thing my mom did was call me screaming that I had destroyed our family, that because of me Lena now had a criminal record, that I was selfish and that I only thought about myself. I hung up on her and blocked her number. My dad also tried to call me, leaving voicemails where he sounded calmer but basically said the same thing, that I had exaggerated everything, that Lena was just upset and did not know how to control her emotions, and that if I dropped the charges everything could go back to normal. As if I wanted to go back to that normal, you know? As if normal were a place where I was worth less than nothing. But then something interesting happened. Apparently, my grandma called several family members, uncles and cousins whom I almost did not see because my parents always said they were busy when there were family gatherings, and told them what had happened. And it turns out that some of them had noticed weird things for years but never said anything because they thought maybe they were misinterpreting the situation. One of my aunts, my mom's sister, called my parents and screamed at them, asking how they dared to treat their own daughter like that. Other relatives also started taking sides, and basically my parents realized they were looking like the villains to the whole family. So they changed strategy. About a week after the incident, my mom appeared at my grandma's house with red eyes as if she had been weeping, knocking on the door and begging to let her speak with me. My grandma asked me if I wanted to see her, and I told her no. But my mom started screaming outside that she just wanted to apologize, and that she had realized her mistakes. My grandma opened the door for her but remained present while my mom gave me this speech about how sorry she was, about how she had not realized how bad things were, and about how she wanted to fix our relationship. But I knew her. I could see in her eyes that it was not genuine, that she was just scared of the legal and social consequences. Elliot explained to me later that my parents had found out that my grandma was considering changing her will to leave them less money because of the neglect towards me, and that probably had motivated their fake apologies. My grandma is quite wealthy. She has properties and savings of a lifetime, and my parents had always counted on inheriting a good part of that. But now that my grandma was furious with them and was documenting years of mistreatment towards me, obviously they were panicking. It still gave me a bit of satisfaction, I am not going to lie, knowing that finally there were real consequences for them beyond just family shame. The following weeks were a weird mix of starting therapy, which my grandma insisted I needed, and she was right, studying for my final exams because all this had happened about a month before the school year ended, and dealing with all the legal stuff. My therapist, a super kind lady named Dr. Wong, helped me understand that nothing that happened was my fault, that being the scapegoat of a family is a real form of abuse, and that it was going to take time to heal from all that. I cried a lot in therapy, letting out years of pain and rage that I had kept inside because I thought I had no right to feel bad. As for school, my teachers found out parts of what had happened because obviously I missed several days and arrived with my face still swollen and visible injuries. Some were super understanding and gave me extensions for my final papers. My friends were also incredible, especially Ethan, a guy with whom I had been casually dating for some months and who became my emotional support system during all this. Ethan and his family, who are some of the warmest and most loving people I have known, invited me to dinner often and made me feel like part of something normal and functional. His mom hugged me every time she saw me and told me that I deserved love and respect. And honestly, those words meant more than she probably knows. The legal process was long and complicated. Lena had to go to court, and Elliot explained to me that she was probably going to receive time in jail because the attack had been very violent and had been documented on video and by medical personnel. My parents were also accused of child neglect and failing to protect me, basically for allowing and reinforcing years of mistreatment. I had to testify, which was terrifying, but Elliot prepared me well, and my grandma was there the whole time. Seeing Lena in court was weird. She looked small and scared, very different from the violent and confident person she had been at home. Part of me felt pity for her, but then I remembered all the years of pain, and that pity disappeared. The judge was quite harsh with everyone. Lena received 6 months in jail, plus community service and mandatory psychological treatment when she got out. My parents were convicted of negligence, received probation, large fines, and were also ordered to take parenting classes, which is ironic considering they had already finished raising me in the most horrible way possible. I also obtained a restraining order against Lena, which basically says she cannot come near me or contact me in any way for the next 5 years. I considered asking for one against my parents too, but I decided not to, although I do not plan to have contact with them either. With all that legal and emotional drama going on, somehow I managed to pass all my finals and even do well. Not with honors or anything because obviously my GPA was affected by everything that was happening, but well enough to graduate and be accepted into my first choice college. It is like 4 hours away from where my grandma lives, but she told me she would support me financially so I could focus on studying instead of having to work full time. That was one of the best days when my acceptance letter arrived, because I felt I finally had a future that I had built, not something my parents had given me or taken away according to their mood. Now, 6 months later, I am in my first semester of college studying psychology, which I guess makes sense considering everything I have lived and everything I have learned about dysfunctional family dynamics. I live in the campus dorms, and it is the first time in my life I have my own space that nobody can invade or take from me. My roommate is super cool. We come from completely different worlds, but we get along well. My grades are going well. I made some new friends, and Ethan and I are still together, although now it is long distance. We see each other on weekends when we can. Lena gets out of jail in like 2 weeks, which makes me nervous. I am not going to lie, but I trust the restraining order to protect me. And I also know that my grandma and Elliot are watching out for anything that happens. I have heard from other relatives that Lena is supposedly different, calmer, and that the time in jail and the mandatory therapy did her good. But honestly, I do not care. I do not plan to find out myself. She is no longer my problem, and I am no longer her punching bag. I have cut all contact with my parents. I blocked all their numbers and social media after they kept trying to contact me with apologies that sounded fake and manipulative. My mom sent me a long letter about 2 months ago where she basically said she understood I was angry, but that with time she hoped we could rebuild our relationship. I read it once and threw it in the trash. Therapy continues. Now I go once a week with a new therapist near campus, and it is helping a lot. I am learning to set boundaries, to recognize healthy versus toxic relationships, and not to feel guilt for prioritizing my well-being. There are difficult days still, days where I wake up with nightmares about Lena attacking me or about my parents telling me I am worth nothing, but they are becoming less frequent, and I have good days too. Days where I sit on campus with my headphones listening to music and think, I made it. I got out of there. I am building my own life. My grandma continues to be my favorite person in the world. We talk on the phone like 3 times a week, and I go visit her every 2 weekends when I do not have many exams. She continues to treat me as if I were the most valuable thing to her. She asks me about my classes, about my friends, about Ethan, and about how I really feel. She gave me a used car for my birthday last month. Nothing fancy, but it runs perfectly and gives me independence to move around. She told me she is proud of me, that I am stronger than I believe myself to be, and those words mean everything to me coming from her. I do not know what is going to happen in the future. If one day Lena will try to contact me after the restraining order expires, if my parents are eventually going to really understand the damage they caused, or if I am simply going to move forward without them in my life forever. What I do know is that I am no longer willing to be anyone's scapegoat, that I deserve respect and real love, and that sometimes the family you choose, like my grandma and like Ethan's family who has adopted me in a certain way, is more important than the blood family you ended up with. I am still healing, I still have bad days, but for the first time in my life, I feel like I am living for myself and not just surviving in a toxic environment, waiting for things to get better. And I guess that is enough for now, you know? It is more than I had for years, and it is a start. Comment. I truly hope this story reminded you that your worth is never defined by how others treat you. Sometimes the strongest bonds we form are not with the people we are born to, but with the people who actually show up for us. Setting boundaries might feel scary at first, but it is often the most important step toward protecting your peace. Never underestimate the power of having just one person stand in your corner when you need it most. That kind of genuine support can change the trajectory of someone's entire life. Please remember that you deserve to feel safe and respected in your own home. Walking away from toxic environments is not selfishness, but a necessary act of survival and self-love. Healing takes time, yet building a life that is truly yours is worth every struggle. I hope you find the courage to choose your well-being today, and every day moving forward. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.